Word of God, and it isn't a dead word.
How do I know the Scriptures is to be believed? Because Jesus Christ has told me so.
This is Westminster Podcast. I'm Nate Shannon. Ian Duguid is back again. Thank goodness. Ian, thanks for being here.
Good to be with you.
So we're going to continue our discussion of Daniel, and I've done many things you told me not to do. I've referred to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego by their pagan names. I'm still working with I'm still splitting Daniel down the middle. But there are, I think, justifiable reasons to think of the second half of the book differently. Is that right?
Yes, it moves into more obviously apocalyptic visions, whereas chapters 1 through 6 is primarily narrative, which we're more used to dealing with.
In chapter 2, does Nebuchadnezzar receive an apocalyptic vision?
Well, visions by themselves are not necessarily apocalyptic.
Okay.
So Pharaoh has visions in Genesis that Joseph comes along and interprets. And there are a lot of similarities between Joseph's interaction with Pharaoh and Daniel's interaction with Nebuchadnezzar. But what makes Daniel 7 through 12 more distinctly apocalyptic is the extraordinary nature of the visions, and particularly the interest in the end. You know, we said last time that the massive apocalyptic is not the end is nigh, but usually the end is not nigh. How do we deal with that fact? But part of that is the reassurance that there is an end. You know, this world is not a kind of stoic cycle.
There is an
in
end,
which you stumble from one piece of chaos to another, which frankly I'm often tempted to believe as I look at my life.
Every morning when I drive through the Glenside, the
Right.
construction, I think this is one
it feels
chaos after another.
and not going somewhere.
Yeah.
It was one of the things that's very distinctive about the biblical worldview in antiquity.
Okay.
Is the eschatological nature of it. That from the beginning, it's about a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's why, I think we're right to call it the Old Testament, which implies that it's incomplete without the New Testament, because it is. You know, if it's a story that has a beginning in Genesis and a middle, God's interactions with Israel that lead up to, because of their sin, lead up to exile, and then a return that's distinctly underwhelming. You know, you look at the books of Ezra and Nehemiah and Esther, and you think, is this really it? Is this, we've had glorious pictures painted in Isaiah, amongst other places, about this new heavens and new earth, and we sure haven't got there yet by the end of the Old Testament period. You know, we need something more than that, something that the New Testament gives us.
It's fascinating that the revelation is received by Pharaoh, by Nebuchadnezzar. In other words, the Lord speaks directly, not just to anyone, to as I think, as you said previously, categorically the most powerful person in the region at the time,
Right?
an oppressor of his people. It seems, I'm tempted to use the word apologetics, let's say polemically significant in terms of the Lord's vindication of himself through Israel. It isn't as though you have a sort of the kingdom of Israel claiming to have had private revelations or whatever. The Lord reveals himself public and not only in well, of course, to Pharaoh, all of the whole nation of Egypt. It's promised that they will know that he is God, and that's apocalyptic or eschatological in itself. That the Lord will finally make public, Matthew 25, that he is the one, and that all will bow the knee to him, and he will render judgment.
Yeah, you have this phrase repeated in the Old Testament, then they will know that I am the Lord. Which implies that in this present world, it's easy to miss that fact. You know, we live in a world where it's not always self-evident to everybody that the Lord is in control, which is why we need to be reminded of these stories where the Lord shows us that he is in control, which then reassures and encourages us in the midst of our messy lives where in the fog of war, it often feels like there's nobody driving the ship. It reminds us that actually this is under control. But equally, the fog of war is the right term. We're involved in a spiritual conflict here and now. This is not a picnic that we're on. This is a military campaign in which we're not simply wrestling with flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces in the heavenly realms.
This idea that the Lord is not in control, that we will not have to give an account to him, that he won't respond to injustice, that his delay proves his impotence to render to justice. That I'm understanding this now from what you're saying as a kind of catch-all for the worldviews that oppose, so to speak, or for the kingdom of darkness in its various expressions. So you've said that the idea that history has a beginning, creation, a middle, under God's sovereignty, and an end, his final resolution of all things, really clashed with the cosmologies and the so-called worldviews in the ancient Near East. But doesn't it also contemporarily? Right. In that we transhumanism is just, let's experiment with how long we can stay alive and how long we can stay beautiful and healthy. There's this idea that history is just sort of the playground of man's self-enjoyment. Right. I think contemporarily as much as in the context of Daniel, for example.
Well, you shall be as God. I mean, it's the oldest lie in the world, but it manifests itself in a variety of different ways. But absolutely, worldview is of critical importance. It's kind of a buzzword in certain circles that can take on a variety of different flavors. But the idea that there are foundational truths that shape our experience of reality, not just our view of reality, our experience of it, is something that's fundamentally biblical. But not just fundamentally biblical, it's fundamentally human. That nobody doesn't have a worldview. Even if they can't articulate for you it very, very clearly, they have some sense of who we are, how we relate to the world around us. And in the ancient world, it was the myths that shaped that. Well, myth is a kind of a slippery word because we often use it to imply things that aren't true. The Bible uses it in that way, so it's not wrong for us to use it in that way. But it has a more technical sense of the way in which stories of the world's origins are explanatory, serve that explanatory function for people. And everybody has explanatory stories that shape the way they think about reality. And in a fundamental sense, when somebody becomes a Christian, they get a fundamentally new origin story. Yep. And that radically changes everything. And at the heart of that, at the heart of the creation narrative, is God's absolute, utter sovereignty. Then contrast the ancient myths about this divine conflict between Baal and the force of chaos, in which there was a narrow won victory and could have gone either way, which certainly would explain why we live in such a messy world, right? The gods aren't very powerful. And they don't really care. They don't have forethoughts. That's why after the pagan flood narrative, it's just as well that one of the humans has survived, because the gods have forgotten that the humans provide their food through the sacrifices. And so you have this picture of the gods gathering like hungry flies around the sacrifices that Unapishtim offers. You think, boy, if that's your view of reality, then that's that has a certain explanatory power as to why the world is the way it is, right? Which also then shapes your attitude to the gods, right? You can't love gods like that because they don't love you. They don't care about you. They think about you the way we think about ants, right? We know they're there. If they invade our space too much, we'll crush them. But most of the time, we sort of ignore them. Now, we may accidentally step on them as we're walking by because we didn't care, and that's sort of how the gods are for people. That if you mess with them, or if you come to their notice, right? You see this concern about the gods noticing you. If the gods notice you, then you're in trouble.
It's probably not good.
It's not good. And they may accidentally crush you anyway. But if you stay out of sight, keeping that head down, you're probably okay. They're too busy doing other things to. But it's a messy world. But it's not a world that's created for a relationship between God and humanity. That's a distinctly Christian in the wider sense worldview that flows out of humanity made in the image of God in the first place.
So I'm just going to celebrate the fact that we're off track already, and ask kind of a follow-up question.
But let me push back a little bit there.
Okay.
There's a lot of creation language in Apocalyptic. And it really is aiming to shape our worldviews, and it does so through a very visual medium. Whereas the medium of prophecy is the word, the medium of Apocalyptic is the vision. The Apocalyptic writer has been to heaven, been to the mountaintop, and he's seen the promised land, and it's glorious and it's worth it. He's kind of like the spy, the minority of the spies in Numbers 13 and 14. He's surveyed the promised land. He's come back with the message of just how good it is, and that we can take on these giants that face us, because the God who is with us is greater than all the powers that are ranged, and those powers ranged against us are very real. The monsters are terrifying.
What does not happen, it's not Plato's cave where they come back and say, the enemies aren't actually real.
Yeah.
All this is just
An illusion.
An illusion. Yeah, that's not what happens.
No.
Yeah. So I was listening to another podcast recently, and we're talking about an ancient kingdom. And the discussion was about the Aztecs. And the question was raised in this conversation about child sacrifice and the other sort of horrifying things that were practiced. And the question was, if they practice these things, it just sort of boggles the mind. How could people do such things? And so the question was, are they like us or not like us? And sort of shockingly, the response of the expert was that, well, the Aztecs basically were like us. And the explanation was that they practiced their religion, and they did these horrible things, human, including child sacrifice, in grotesque ways. Not that human sacrifice isn't grotesque as it is, but they even had shocking ways of carrying it out. But they did these things for political reasons, in order to demonstrate their power. So they say at war with another group of people, and they would sort of incorporate this group of people. And so they put this display, they would display their fierceness, the ferociousness of their religion in order for social order, for control. And so, now, I raise that because what's in the background of an explanation like that is an interpretation that sort of the basic forces moving in a society are political. And we can even rationalize something like human sacrifice if we look at it from a socio-political perspective. And we can even say, actually, we do the same things. We do similar things. Maybe it's an exaggerated characterization of the political position of our opponents, but we're just trying to calm down our constituency, give them confidence, and calm the ranks, that kind of. And I find that very interesting because when you're describing ancient Near Eastern worldview, you're referring to the religious myths. And so we have maybe, I think, a secular tendency to think in terms of politics or socio-political order. And then appropriately enough, ancient Near Eastern worldview thing, we're looking to the religious myths. I'm going to add one more piece and then ask you to answer all my questions. The other piece is I've always found it curious that in Acts 17, Paul tours Athens and he sees economy. He sees immigration. He sees various ethnic groups mixing. He sees the Jewish religion trying to keep itself together. He talks with the philosophers. But then when he speaks, and then he uses poetry. But the first thing out of his mouth is that I see that in everything you're very religious.
Right.
So his point of contact is religious myths, despite the fact that he's sort of had contact with so many potentially different points of entry and sociological sort of aspects. I don't know if you'd have any comment on that. I just find it interesting. I find the secular approach to be compelling on some level, except that it dismisses the religion as not a real aspect of human life. Yeah.
Yeah, man is incurably religious. To me, the shape of religion changes. But we all have ultimate values, and we prioritize those, and those idols, if we want to use that religious language, promise us blessing if we meet their laws, if we obey them, and curse if we disobey, if we fail. And so child sacrifice it's the ultimate gift. Right, what could be more precious to you than your firstborn?
Yeah.
And so to give that gift to your idol is, and pagan religion is fundamentally transactional. It's a quid pro quo. So I'm giving you my most precious thing in hopes that you, all-powerful deity, will give me what I want. And what I want may be security, keep me safe from this invading army that's about to threaten us. It can be significance. If I give you my firstborn, then you'll give me 10 sons in replacement of that. And if you ask, what do modern people do in pursuit of security and significance, and how do we sacrifice some of the things that are precious to us? Or, you look at people who sacrifice a marriage in pursuit of their career, because their idol of career success says, you will matter if you make partner. You will matter, and the cost of doing that is you're going to have to work 60 hours a week, and that means never being home with your family. And it's going to cost you your marriage.
I cannot imagine human sacrifice. I can totally imagine giving up everything, including my health, for the sake of my career. That's very common.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
But the costliness of it in a transactional relationship, ironically makes it all the more valuable.
It makes sense. It speaks to the human heart. In a terrible. So in that sense, to look for the religious expression of man, we don't look for religion.
Right.
We look for that. You put it in Genesis 12 language: blessing, curse, protection. Right. So where do you? And this is upper middle class language. Where do you invest?
Right.
What are you depending on? What are you hoping? The one thing I hope the Lord doesn't take from me is my meager retirement account. I can sacrifice my day, no problem. But yeah. And
for the people for whom Apocalyptic is written, they're losing those things regularly. The empire is saying, I'll let you keep this, but only if you bow down and worship this 90-foot statue that I've just erected. Which is deliberately vague, so you can make it whatever deity you want it to be. It's not specific who this idol is supposed to represent. What's very clear is that this is the idol that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. So in bowing down to him, to this idol, you're bowing down to Nebuchadnezzar effectively. So the political and the religious are not separate in antiquity. They're tightly connected together.
Nor are they separate today, as much as we might be told that they are. The political is religious, no doubt about it. So I appreciate you trying to get it back to the text. Thanks for indulging, Ian. I knew you could handle it. Let me read a little bit from Daniel chapter 7.
Right.
And I think, so as we said about the book of Daniel previously, some of the most beloved stories in all the Bible are in this book. Also, some of the most contentious passages, possibly in all of Scripture. And I remember when I was little hearing about the Soviet Union being the fourth kingdom or whatever, stuff like that. And you've helped us a great deal so far. So I want to maybe look at Daniel chapter 7. So it goes this way. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions of his head as he lay in his bed. Characteristic language of the book of Daniel, is it?
Right.
Is it not? Yeah. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. I've never managed to do that, wake up and write down my dream. It's always escapes before I could find a pen.
Right.
Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. And four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. And behold, another beast, the second one like a bear. It was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And it was told, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and behold, another, like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up from among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames. Its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and came out from before him. 1,000 thousands served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. I looked then because of the sound of the great words that the horn was speaking. And as I looked, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed, and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. This is the word of the Lord. And as you said, Ian, the imagery is, you can't look away. It's really striking. But then what do I do with this text?
Yeah, it's interesting you stop there.
Okay.
Because there's an interpretation. And as I said last time, whenever you see a vision, you always want to ask, well, what does it mean? Yeah, Daniel's going to ask, what does it mean? The angel's going to tell him what it means. Mm-hmm. And whatever the angel says, that's what it means.
That's its meaning. Yeah.
Carry on.
Verse 13, I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. As for me, Daniel, my spirit within me was anxious, and the visions of my head alarmed me. I approached one of those who stood there and asked him the truth concerning all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of the things. These 4 great beasts are 4 kings who shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever and ever. Then I desired to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrifying with its teeth of iron and claws of bronze, which devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet, and about the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn that came up, before which 3 of them fell, the horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke great things, and that seemed greater than its companions. As I looked, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, As for the fourth beast, there shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms. And it shall devour the whole earth, and trample it down, and break it to pieces. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall arise, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the former ones, and put down 3 kings, and shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law, and they shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, to be consumed and destroyed to the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Here is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly alarmed me, and my color changed, but I kept the matter in my heart.
Right, so we're told what it means. Sort of.
Sort of.
Right? There are some things that become very, very clear, and some things that remain really fuzzy. In fact, we're actually told what it means twice. So the angel, Daniel asks, "What does this mean?" The angel says, "This is what it means." Daniel says, "I got questions, especially about the little horn and the fourth beast." And the angel gives him a little bit more, not very much, but then returns to the point that he made earlier, which is, this is a scary picture, right? And it just gets scarier. So the first king, notice it's king, not kingdom to begin with, and then later it's kingdom. So already we're a bit fuzzy as to what these beasts represent. The first king is scary, and that's Nebuchadnezzar, right? He's this depiction of the lion with wings that, it's a classic Babylonian image, but also these wings being torn off, given the mind of a man, that reminds us of chapter 4 and the restoration of Nebuchadnezzar. You think that's scary, but you ain't seen nothing yet, right? It just gets progressively worse. So then you've got you have this bear that's in the middle of eating, and is told to go and eat some more. And then you have this lion with 4 wings and 4 heads. So it's facing in all 4 directions. You can't run away from it. But it's also got wings, so it can move rapidly. So you can't run, you can't hide. And then you got, the fourth beast is the worst of all. You've moved out of composite real world creatures into the world of science fiction. Right, with its iron jaws, and this is unworldly, and so it shows history as being this terrifying period of one thing after another, but that's not the point. The point is that at that point, when you think things can get absolutely no worse, that's when the Ancient of Days says enough, sets up his court with his royal thrones, and declares victory for the saints of the Most High, who are then presented to him together with this one like a son of man who is coming on the clouds, which in antiquity is 2 images that don't belong together. So, when New Testament scholars think of the Son of Man, they always think in terms of this passage. But that's not how ancient Israelites would have thought of the Son of Man. The phrase Son of Man occurs 100+ times. And this is the exception, not the rule. A Son of Man is somebody, Ben Adam, somebody who shares the attributes of being Adam, being human. Human one. So the most common place where it occurs in the book of Ezekiel as a reference to the prophet. The prophet is the Son of Man in contrast to Almighty God. So here you have somebody who embodies humanity, but he's coming on the clouds, which in antiquity is an attribute of deity. The Lord is the one who rides on the clouds. And of course in pagan myths, Baal is the one who's the cloud rider. And so here we have this person who is separate from the Ancient of Days, right? He's presented to him, and yet combines with it himself the attributes of humanity and divinity. Daniel's mind is just blown. I mean, how can he put it, get that together? But obviously from a New Testament perspective, now we can start to see why Jesus picks the title Son of Man, because it combines both of those images together. And in his earthly ministry, his focus is on the humanity of the Son of Man. It's a humble image, which again shows that people are not immediately thinking this is a claim to Daniel 7:13, Son of Man. Otherwise, everybody would have seen that as a really outlandish claim. The title is ambiguous enough that it contains both within it. And where the angel is constantly drawing Daniel's attention back to is, yes, this is a world of scary monsters. They'll only get scarier. But when the end comes, victory does not go to the scary monsters. Victory goes to the Son of Man and his people. And so people have wrestled with what could the Son of Man mean, right? If you leave Jesus out of it, then people have said, well, maybe the Son of Man represents Israel, but he receives worship. This is not a manifestation of Israel in the conventional sense, at least. But the point is that, as in chapter 2, the kingdom belongs to God and to his people, and they triumph forever. And the scary monsters are the ones who eventually are destroyed. Which means that, in the present, while you're living under the yoke of the scary monsters, it's a reminder that this is not the end of the story. The end of the story is that God's people win. And the Lord is the judge. Which, again, if you think about it from a persecution situation, you don't want to go see the judge.
Right.
He's the embodiment of the power of the empire to persecute you, to kill you. But he's not the ultimate judge. The Ancient of Days, the one who's been from everlasting and is to everlasting, he's the one who sets up his throne and delivers the ultimate verdict, which has ultimate power over eternal power over your destiny, which makes it worthwhile thumbing your nose at the earthly judge, just as the three young men did with Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 3, and saying, you can kill me, so I serve a judge who has much higher authority than that. And his kingdom is the one that endures forever.
John MacArthur refused to, obey COVID restrictions, and he held in-person worship. So I'm thinking, I'm not going to ask you to sort of opine on that, but just in the sense of we have three things here. Sort of, we have Daniel's situation, the situation of Judeans in exile,
right?
And we've seen that the first beast here, just as the golden head of the image in chapter 2, represent Nebuchadnezzar himself or Babylon,
right?
So there's sort of immediate application in that sense, and then if we ask the question, if I'm understanding you correctly, so who are the four succeeding kingdoms representing the different elements, the different materials that comprise the statue, or who are the other beasts, and so on. You're saying that historical specificity is not the point. The point is that there will be sort of succeeding tyrannical powers or oppressors, or
Right.
that the world is not. We're not going to be on vacation. We can't expect peace, and so on.
And that's the whole story. There is no, it's not as if there's, and this is why, I think my interpretation is problematic for postmillennials. I think if
Explain that for us.
So postmillennials are generally looking for this golden age, whether they think we're there or close to it or somewhere in the future, where there's an increasing Christianization of the world, which then leads to this golden age of peace and harmony. Daniel 7 says until the end, it's an increasing picture of persecution for the saints. And that's why if you think about these as literal historical kingdoms, then in a sense, since the time of the Romans, we haven't been in the time of beasts, right? They come to an end with the Romans. But that's not an apocalyptic thing to think, right? The essence of apocalyptic is not that if we vote the right people in, things will get better. It's that we live in a world of black and white in which often the forces of evil are very powerful and very strong. And that's the way it's going to be until the Lord declares an end to all things.
I now have 10 times as many questions as I had a minute ago.
Yeah.
No, but to shelf those things. How this is relevant as well. So I'm wondering, if I'm reading this text, I want to apply it.
Right.
I want to apply it to my own life.
Right.
And as we've noted, I live here in the suburbs of Philly. When I go home, I expect my house to be there. Actually, when I go home, I live in a house.
Right.
And I don't expect political persecution. If I get pulled over and the police harass me, I can make a big deal out of that.
Yeah.
I can appeal. And those and so how could I read this or do this for us, Ian? What are ways in which I should not read or apply this text to myself or my context?
Right.
And guide me as a Christian seeking encouragement or seeking to be taught by the Lord. How is this text guiding me to think about my own life?
Right. Yeah, I think it's challenging us to evaluate our view of normality. We tend to think that experience is normal.
Yeah.
And it's abnormal for the church to be persecuted.
Okay.
And Apocalyptic is written for people for whom it's very much the norm.
Yeah.
That Satan is a devil who roars like a roaring lion, goes around seeking whom he may devour. I think our perspective often underplays the significance of evil. Until, of course, when we come face to face with it in some circumstance that really takes us by surprise, because we didn't really think we were involved in spiritual warfare, right? That's happening in other places to other people, but not to us.
Or in a sense, we very conveniently translate spiritual warfare to political warfare,
Right?
And so we would categorize, right? And I think the danger there. I'm sort of enjoying my own idea, I guess, but the danger there would be to say, if stress or professional or political failure or something, if I view those things as an exception,
Right.
then I will say, well, the kingdom of God has been offended. And on behalf of the kingdom of God, I need to respond politically.
Right.
I need to become an activist, or I need to stand up to this person. And in other words, what's not in the cards is I need to look to the Lord.
Right.
I need to be humbled here. I need to see how is it that that I'm meant to glorify God in this situation.
Right.
So that confusion of categories, I think. So I guess that goes to what you're saying, that the book is trying to draw our attention, or is it challenge the way in which we are interpreting our present circumstances?
Yeah. That this world is not our friend. It's not our home. But we often live as if it is. So we want Jesus to come back. But not before next weekend. I got plans, right?
Yeah.
We become very comfortable here, and Apocalyptic wants to shake us up and challenge that. Now, biblical wisdom is a whole thing, right? It's not, if you just take one piece of biblical truth and camp out there, you can easily end up with an unbalanced theology.
Okay. You have something specific in mind?
Yeah, well, so Apocalyptic is written to people who have no political power or influence.
Okay.
And so it's not going to, it's not going to instruct them about, how to use the power.
Okay. That was my next question. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I think other parts of the Bible are going to come into play.
Okay.
And so, even other parts that talk about the exile. So Jeremiah's vision for the exiles to seek the shalom of the place where God has put them, while waiting for the Lord to bring them back.
In a sense, that's in the background here because Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, excuse me if I use those are the names that come to mind, but they're serving in supposedly in the episodes that are not included in the book.
Right.
They're serving faithfully the political and social order of the
kingdom. There they are in the belly of the beast.
Yeah.
And working in such a way that they get promoted.
How about that?
So, there's a balance here. The evil empire is still the evil empire, and yet nonetheless, there can be a calling for Christians to, as God gives them opportunity to serve their neighbors, it takes wisdom to know what that balance looks like.
Yeah, and I've disparaged sort of constantly sort of the Christian political mindset. I don't mean to do that. I just want to, because you're saying Daniel's pushing us to remember our spiritual world or the spirituality of our world. And I think our context, Ian, if I could, our socio-political, geographical context offers many inducements to spiritual negligence.
Right.
In the sense that we're constantly invited to neglect spiritual realities and to just live and move and have our being in a comfortable political socio-political situation or which masquerades as spiritual sort of neutrality.
Yeah, we're pragmatists.
You were pragmatist. We become pragmatists.
And so we think, okay, this is working for me. We're much more like Esther in her early days in our approach to the evil empire. We make the evil empire work for us, whatever that costs us religiously. So she gets drawn into the harem. Now she's not guilty of that any more than Daniel's guilty of being carried off to Babylon. But it's strikingly different how she responds to the evil empire to the way that Daniel and his friends do. So Daniel and his friends have a resistance strategy which involves not taking advantage of all the things the empire has to offer, in order to remain consciously dependent upon God. Daniel is known to be 3 times a day praying towards Jerusalem, whereas Esther is under the radar. Nobody even knows that she's a believer in Israel's God, which means she's not keeping kosher, she's not observing festivals, she's not keeping Sabbath, because in a harem, in that close quarters, there's no way that you could disguise any of those distinctive features and still not be known as Jewish. So, and she's doing well out of that. I mean, she's taken Vashti's place and is having all these wonderful beauty treatments, and it's a dream until it isn't, right? Until Haman comes along and is about ready to blow everything up, and then she has to evaluate, okay, where are my priorities?
Wow.
And Apocalyptic is helping us evaluate where are our priorities. And the time to be doing that is before we're in the crisis situation. So we need to use Apocalyptic to prepare ourselves for the reality that we live in a very dark and broken world, where there is we have no right to expect life to go smoothly for us. But we have God's word to speak to us in those situations.
Yeah, right. And I think it might, the default position might be, I sort of survive at a lukewarm sort of temperature, and then maybe the Lord will call me into His service, maybe not.
Right.
But for now, all
Yeah.
is well. And so that requires a wake up call.
Yeah, and wake up call is exactly right for describing apocalyptic. Not just a call, a yell.
A yell.
It's in your face. It's the fire alarm. Except fire alarms typically are only audio, and apocalyptic is going to give you the video. These dramatic pictures that are supposed to both terrify us and also comfort us. It never underplays the power of the forces of evil. That the Satan's enmity towards God's people is unlimited, but it always puts it in the context of, but God's power is greater even than that. And when the evil empire does its worst, it can do no more than kill you. Whereas the one who sits on that throne, the Ancient of Days, has the power of the second death, as Revelation calls it.
I want to look at chapter 8 as well with you. But before doing that, one thing that strikes me, Ian, is you've said many times, you've referred to the images of apocalyptic literature. And I find that very exciting, because apocalyptic literature is literature. There aren't images, strictly speaking. They're literary images.
They're word images.
Word images. And I think that's very interesting from a number of angles. Let me just ask this without, I don't want to indulge, but what's your sense of sort of actual visual recreations of this? If I texted you, said, Ian, I just painted a really cool picture of Daniel 7. Come over and check out how I handled the fourth beast. Are you thinking, oh, Nate, don't, man? What's your sense of that kind of artistic reproductions or other things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, because of course, I mean, there have been in the history of church architecture, there have been people who've done murals and paintings, often inspired by visions of heaven and hell. And in some ways, I always feel like the visuals don't actually live up to. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but sometimes 1,000 words is actually more evocative than the picture.
I agree. Yeah.
But it is a vision that they're describing. And again, that's the classic medium of the apocalyptic, in contrast to the prophet. The prophet is primarily describing things that are happening in this world. And the apocalyptic writer has been on a journey. He's been to heaven. He's seen the promised land. It's fascinating to me to see the language of apocalyptic in Martin Luther King, for example, in his famous I Have a Dream speech. It's very apocalyptic language, but the content of his speech is not apocalyptic at all.
Wow.
It's all about this world and about boycotts and buses and political maneuvers, which may be right or may be wrong, but the language he's borrowed from the black church, which has historically had much more interest in apocalyptic than the white church, because often they've been people suffering
Their experience.
their experience, and so apocalyptic has resonated with them.
Wow.
But that ability of words to conjure up images that in some cases can be more powerful than our recreations of those words and images.
I don't think you're saying that sort of the maybe artistic attempts at recreating these literary images is in any way prohibited. No. But it can be very limited. I sort of have confidence that somewhere out there, there's an artist capable of maybe successfully reproducing the experience of some aspect of Daniel 7, for example.
Right.
Some aspect maybe of the terror of the fourth beast, or of what, Daniel says his color changed,
Yeah.
So maybe there's a way that an artist can reproduce that experience for us in some way. But I think a weaker approach artistically might be to literally translate these things to a representational medium. I don't see that as likely to succeed, and I would see that as beside the point, as well.
But it is interesting that in contrast to the rest of the scripture, which is so reticent in describing God in any visual ways, it's in Apocalyptic that you get these very visual descriptions. And I think that in part that's because of the situation that you're in, that the pressing need to describe God in ways that really communicate powerfully for those who are quite literally about to go to the fire for their faith. They they have an additional need that isn't there in the same way for most of us.
I'm going to go out on a limb here with this question, Ian. Do you think that there is? So I'm struck by the example of Martin Luther King's "I have a dream" speech. I'd never considered it in that light as a kind of, if I could say it this way, socio-political apocalyptic. It's a vision for a greater reality. Do you think that that we see things like that, a kind of secular apocalyptic in the contemporary world, intended to preach hope? Is there sort of an instinct in man that an appreciation for that, for the value of an apocalyptic genre in sort of the political man today?
Yeah, a number of years ago, I wrote an article called "Armageddon Without Apocalyptic," because this was right around the year 2000, when there was a lot of apocalyptic interest generally, and a number of movies that had externally apocalyptic themes. Like Waterworld and Deep Impact, and Deep Impact actually was a particularly interesting exemplar of that because it was so explicitly religious in some of the language it used, in contrast to Armageddon, the movie, which started out with a quote from Revelation on the screen about hailstones and destroying everything, but was so anti-apocalyptic because essentially the plot of the movie, spoiler alert, no spoiler if you know anything about movies, is that NASA can avert the end of the world by the right application of technology by brave people, which is the opposite of apocalyptic.
Right. Which presupposes sort of hopelessness. And human ability to change the times and the seasons. I mean, the essence of apocalyptic is God has set that time, and there's nothing that Nebuchadnezzar or anybody else can do to prevent it, right? So I think there is this apocalyptic strand, particularly in American thought. I think it comes from the origins of New England and those who are on an errand into the wilderness. They were going to create a kind of earthly new heavens and new earth, in a sense, a lighthouse on a hill to shine light back to Europe. And so I think that through the theme of manifest destiny, has become there's a secularized version of that. Ronald Reagan's desire to have a shield against missile attacks was based on his reading of Revelation. Now again, I don't think you've read Revelation very well if you think that having the right weaponry will prevent you from being destroyed in a final battle. But there is a strand of that in secularized form that's part of the American worldview in a way that's not really part of the European worldview. And I think you see that in some cultural artifacts. Interesting. We'll leave that for another episode. I look forward to it. Daniel chapter 8.
Right.
In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel. It's endearing, the first person. He names himself and everything, so there's no missing. After that which appeared to me at the first. And I saw in the vision, and when I saw, I was in Susa, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision, and I was at the Ulai Canal. I raised my eyes and saw, and behold, so much visual language, right?
Yeah.
A ram standing on the bank of the canal. It had 2 horns, and both horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. I saw the ram charging westward and northward and southward. No beast could stand before him, and there was no one who could rescue from his power. He did as he pleased and became great. As I was considering, behold, a male goat came from the west across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. He came to the ram with the 2 horns, which I had seen standing on the bank of the canal, and he ran at him in his powerful wrath. I saw him come close to the ram, and he was enraged against him and struck the ram and broke his 2 horns. And the ram had no power to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled on him. And there was no one who could rescue the ram from his power. Then the goat became exceedingly great, but when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and instead of it there came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. Out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. It grew great even to the host of heaven, and some of the host and some of the stars it threw down to the ground and trampled on them. It became great, even as great as the prince of the host, and the regular burnt offering was taken away from him, and the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. And a host will be given over to it together with the regular burnt offering because of transgression. And it will throw truth to the ground, and it will act and prosper. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, "For how long is the vision concerning the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and host to be trampled underfoot?" And he said to me, "For 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state." No, I would stop there, but I know you would chide me, so I'm going to read the... When I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it, as we all do. And behold, there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, and it called, "Gabriel, make this man understand the vision." So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was frightened and fell on my face. But he said to me, "Understand, O Son of Man, that the vision is for the time of the end." And when he had spoken to me, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground. But he touched me and made me stand up. He said, "Behold, I will make known to you what shall be at the latter end of the indignation, for it refers to the appointed time of the end." There's a lot of strange language in here, Ian.
Yeah.
Anyway, you'll clear all of that up for us, I'm sure. As for the ram that you saw with the 2 horns, these are the kings of Media and Persia. And the goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn between his eyes is the first king. As for the horn that was broken, in place of which 4 others arose, 4 kingdoms shall arise from his nation, but not with his power. And at the latter end of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their limit, a king of bold face, one who understands riddles, shall arise. His power shall be great, but not by his own power. He shall cause fearful destruction and shall succeed in what he does, and destroy mighty men and the people who are the saints. By his cunning he shall make deceit prosper under his hand. In his own mind he shall be great. Without warning he shall destroy many, and he shall even rise up against the prince of princes, and he shall be broken, but by no human hand. I might have to clear up the pronouns there, but the vision of the evenings and the mornings that has been told is true, but seal up the vision, for it refers to many days from now. And here's the conclusion of the chapter. And I, Daniel, was overcome and lay sick for some days. Then I rose and went about the king's business. But I was appalled by the vision and did not understand it. He asked for explanation. He gets an explanation. He still is troubled, and he still doesn't understand. That's how I feel.
Right. Yeah, so the whole aspect of Daniel understanding and not understanding is kind of intriguing, right? Which again highlights the fact that these are not intended to be self-explanatory visions, that even with the angel's interpretation, it's not self-evident what this means. I think the reason Daniel's appalled is again, he's been reading Jeremiah, as we find in chapter 9, and he's counting, and he's thinking we're nearly there yet. And this is saying, actually, there's still a long way to go. But notice, to begin with, how in the interpretation, here we're explicitly told that the ram with the two horns is the Medes and the Persians, right? The shorter horn, the Medes; the longer horn, the Persians. The goat is Greece. We're not explicitly told this, but it's self-evident with the hindsight of history. The first single horn is Alexander the Great. The four horns, who at the height of his powers divides his kingdom into four different parts. And two parts of that, the Seleucids and the Ptolemies, are going to be the focus in later on. So part of that, and the reason why they're going to be the focus is because they're the part whose conflicts are going to engage Israel, or what's left of Israel, Jerusalem and Judea. And the king who's described here, everyone agrees, is Antiochus Epiphanes, who is a second century Seleucid king, who invades Judah, captures Jerusalem, burns the scriptures, sacrifices pig's flesh on the altar of the temple, and brutally suppresses faith in the Lord. And so you have this period of history in the 160s that is where we get to in the description of history, which is why critical scholars have argued for a long time the book of Daniel is written in the 160s, because that's how far it prophesies and that stops. And so they've argued this is all prophecy after the event. Now, having said that, if we flip the script for a minute and we say, if you're claiming that your God is the God of all gods, who controls every aspect of history, you would expect that God to be able to predict the future,
Right.
because you'd pretty much require it to believe it, right? If I were to say to you, I can tell you exactly what will happen, a week from now, and then I say, but I'm not going to.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a claim like that, you've got to back it up somewhere. And so the God who claims to be the God of the Old Testament would have to back it up with predictive prophecy. And that, of course, is exactly what we find. And in broad terms, we find it here in chapter 8, much more intensely in chapter 11, much more specificity. Now, of course, from Daniel's perspective, all of that's in the future, and so he can't see that as vindication of God, except insofar as the willingness to put his reputation on the line and to give that level of specificity itself is a significant claim. But yeah, from Daniel's perspective, oh no. Because this is Belshazzar's reign he's in at this point. So we're almost at the end of the Babylonian Empire, right? Belshazzar is the last of the Babylonian kings, co-regent with his father Nabonidus. And in fact, we didn't know about Belshazzar outside the Bible for a long time. And so people were very skeptical about the story of Belshazzar, because we knew who the Babylonian kings were, and we knew the last of the Babylonian kings was Nabonidus. There was no room for this Belshazzar.
Interesting. So you're talking about extra biblical, archaeological.
For a long time we didn't have any evidence until finally they dug up some tablets that referred to Nabonidus' son, Babylonian equivalent of Belshazzar, who was his co-regent when he often went on trips to different places. So now we've got an answer to what seemed like an insoluble problem.
Very interesting.
So Daniel is being told here that the future is after the restoration to Judah, it's not as if there's going to be this triumphant entry into the golden age. They're going to go through it all again and be oppressed and have foreign invaders, and God's people are going to suffer, and that's that's the pathway. This is like Jesus saying, if you want to follow after me, you've got to take up your cross, which we think of in very domesticated terms, because people wear crosses as if that was
taking it up.
Yeah. Whereas this is an instrument of torture and death. And Daniel's being told, this persecution, the trials that you're suffering now, that this is not just a temporary thing. This is this continuing saga in the history of God's people, because of the enmity of the evil one, who at the end of the day only has three strategies: persecution, seduction, and deception. And I think persecution is his favorite one, because I don't think it's his most effective weapon. But I think he kind of enjoys it.
Tends to use it more.
And yet it's the means often by which God brings remarkable glory to himself.
Christ himself was persecuted.
Exactly.
That's really intriguing observation. Is there a sense in which this could backfire? Daniel's being told, Daniel, and I think of him in terms of, as you described his context, he's been sort of re-educated. We're how many decades in? We're 4 or 5 decades into his. He's been serving at a very high sort of political level. He's got a lot of responsibility.
Right.
Supposedly, he's witnessing things which he's uncomfortable with. He may be participating in things he doesn't like. Anybody who has a job,
right,
sees things and has to not respond to things which he thinks are unjust. Right. And here's a Jew,
right,
who's in Babylon.
Right.
People surrounding him are talking about false gods all the time and sacrifices and all kinds of strange. Probably every sort of cultural touch point is offensive.
Right.
And he's told that his reward will be that his people will suffer for centuries to follow.
Right.
That doesn't sound like great advertising. In Daniel's position, wouldn't you think maybe, this is just not. It's not going to work out. I'm never going to see the reward for this. You would slowly sort of slip into sort of the pragmatism that you've mentioned before, and just say, I just have to have the least painful death possible, and just get to the finish line and let the Lord deal with it, because this is not going to go. Don't you think that would be sort of a spiritual...
Which is why Apocalyptic really rubs in the point that faithfulness matters. That you don't want to be among those who are unfaithful. That this is absolutely God is sovereign over everything, but human actions matter. Prayer matters. That's one of the key themes in Daniel. Daniel's been praying in chapter 9, which is where the angel comes to him with this message from when you started to pray. You received an answer from on high, which is in a sense such a bizarre idea, that in a world populated by gods and demons that are of such massive power, angels and archangels, that human people just saying a few words has an impact on the course of history, even a decisive impact under the sovereignty of God. Obviously, God is sovereign over what we'll pray anyway, but that our prayers matter.
It's almost offensively counterintuitive, Ian, to think, as you mentioned, Many times, Apocalyptic is written for people who don't have any influence.
Right.
And it's as though the Lord wants to say, He just wants prayer's the last thing on the table. And it's almost as though He knows that we won't depend on it unless it is the last thing on the table.
Yeah.
And remarkable that the Lord Himself, with all the power that He has, would choose to work through the prayers of desperate, confused people.
Right.
His color changes. He gets sick. He can't sleep.
Yeah.
But His prayers are the instruments of the Lord's moving kingdoms.
And he's still serving the king,
He's still
which raises the question: which king are we talking about? And also, it's both of them, I think, right? You know, he's still.
When you say that, you mean which king in terms of?
Is it the human king or the divine king?
Right.
Who's really king here? Well, chapter 5 shows us. I mean, he's willing to serve Belshazzar and, interpret the writing for him, but he doesn't. Belshazzar wants to give him all this stuff, and you feel like he's going. There's no point. You can promise to make me third in your kingdom. You're gonna be dead tomorrow. So I'm not overly impressed by the baubles that you're showering.
I think that's such a great American moment. Keep your stuff. I don't care. It's such a libertarian moment. But yeah, it's kind of his eschatological conviction peeking through.
Yeah, I mean, because this really. We so often don't recognize this, but this is in reality whenever our idols offer us stuff, it's the same moment. I mean, for Daniel, it's literally tomorrow. So why bother giving me this office and giving me all this stuff? Because the Persians and Medes are at the gate, and you're gonna be dead tomorrow. But the reality is, isn't that the case for all of the things that we strive for so much? The house that we really want to have, the job promotion, all the good things of this world, they're all gone tomorrow. They're the flower of the field. But the word of our God endures forever.
It's very interesting. The way that you say that, I'm going to expose sort of the chaos of my mind here from I think immediately of a lot of Eastern philosophies. I mean, what you just said, if we were to pull that out as a soundbite, that's Buddhism in a nutshell. It's going to be gone tomorrow, and you delude yourself. You put yourself through. It's kind of a self-abuse to allow yourself to be attached to things. Suffering is just a byproduct of pointless attachment. So let it all go. But then you said, but the word of the Lord endures forever.
Right.
So I think there's sort of the anthropology there. One is, a silent sort of self-annihilation is really the only option you have. Or you're created in the image of God, and you are destined for communion with God and for communion with other image bearers.
And that what you do here matters.
Yeah.
Your act of obedience here, however small that is in a cosmic level, it matters. And these will shine like stars. Use the language of Daniel 12.
So in 2008, you published a book on Daniel, and I wanted to share with someone because I have this, harbor this private frustration with the description. Reformed expository commentary. That's not very inviting. Tell us what we would find in this book. So this is your Reformed expository commentary on Daniel, published by P&R in 2008. So what is a Reformed expository commentary?
Yeah, it's really a series of sermons. So it's very accessible. You can read it, chapter by chapter, like you'd read a book, or listen to a series of sermons. But obviously rooted and grounded in the academic work that I've done on Daniel, which is what made me really excited to preach through the book. Yeah.
So that I think your Reformed expository commentary is even more accessible than the conversations we've just had about Daniel. In other words, these are sermons,
right?
And the way that the series has been labeled might be potentially misleading. It's very accessible. And I think it's the kind of thing that anyone could sort of, I got 45 minutes before the kids get home or whatever, or till I have to take them wherever they're going, and read a very sort of rewarding essay on Daniel chapter 1 or on, literally a sermon,
Right.
which will give you the interpretive gems that you've provided in these last two in our conversations on day, but also the Christological sort of capstone of the whole thing.
Yeah. If we don't see Christ, then we haven't understood the passage.
Then we haven't understood, even if you're left with many questions, as Daniel himself
Right.
was. Imagine that the man who saw the vision didn't have all the answers,
Right.
but the Lord said, "What I've given you is enough." And what you're saying is, Christ is enough. Even if we don't get all the answers that we might want for the interpretation of Daniel, we do get the answer that the Lord wants us to have, which is that, as you said, His word endures forever, and that He is now enthroned, and that His kingdom will come.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ian, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This is the Westminster Podcast.
This has been a podcast of Westminster Media. Westminster Media is a ministry of Westminster Theological Seminary. If you would like to join us in our mission to train specialists in the Bible to proclaim the whole counsel of God for Christ and His global church, please visit www.wts.edu/donate. This podcast was hosted by Nate Shannon and edited by Brandon McLean Smith.